It is extremely hot outside today. Extremely hot. And this makes me want to have like a nice cold, refreshing beer. And so today I'm going to be brewing one, which will hopefully be ready very quickly, probably within a couple of weeks. In hot weather, I crave Saison. But what I want to do today is start an experiment using Kveik yeast. Okay, I'm going to stop myself right there. I do know that it's pronounced Kveik. I was just very hot that day. So yeah, do forgive. I do eventually correct myself. Brewing essentially Saison, but I'm going to do it 3 different ways. I'm going to have like a straight up Kveik Saison, and then I'm going to have 2 other carboys where I'll probably be fruiting them or something like that. But anyway, what I'm going to be looking for in the grist for this is just like a Weyermann Pilsner base. That's actually going to be 85% of the grist. And then I want just like a little bit of hints of kind of breadiness and some softness to it. So I'm going to be using 7.5% each of Weyermann Vienna malt, and then also some white wheat malt. So as you can see here, I've just got the grist. I'm doing 15 gallons, so this is a lot of grain here. But now I'm just going to go ahead and get them into my grain mill right over here. This is my Monster Mill 3mm Pro. Check out my build on that if you want to see what I did with the actual stand here. So we're just going to let this crush through this grain and then wait for the strike water to be at temp. Alright, so we have the grain all nicely crushed here, and we are at strike temp. So I'm just going to go ahead and dump this all in. I also added a little pH stabilizer to this just because I have such a light beer, just with the water profile that I've got here, and the fact that I've got all that RO water. But anyway, so I'm just going to mash in, get this all nicely mixed up. I'm going to do a protein rest on this for 20 minutes. So I'm doing that at 125 Fahrenheit or 51.7 Celsius. I find especially with this Weyermann malt, it's important to do that just to kind of wind up with a slightly clearer beer. Works nicely with it. So anyway, that's looking good. I'm going to get this all set up and we'll see what she looks like once we're doing a little recirc on that. Alright, so we're at 51.7 and you can see here just doing the recirc for this little protein rest. So like I said, 20 minutes, and then we're going to bump up and start actually going for the conversion. Alright, so the protein rest is done. So now I'm just going to quickly increase the temperature here. I'm going to get it up to 62.8 Celsius or 145 Fahrenheit for a beta amylase rest, and we'll let it sit there for 45 minutes, and then we'll increase for an alpha. Alright, well after that 45 minutes, it's time to increase to 67.8 or around 154 Fahrenheit. And then we'll do that alpha rest. I'm doing this step mash just to try and create as attenuable of a wort as possible. Then after that, it'll be time to mash out. Ah, look at that. Crystal clear wort in there. Yeah, so at this point, I'm going to increase it up to 75 Celsius or like around 168 Fahrenheit there just to mash out. Let it sit there for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then it is time to run off. All right, so we have mashed out for a little bit here. Gonna shake off some of that grain. Get it set up. Oil kettle here, and just switch my lids so we can start this sparge, fly sparge, I should say. Nice. Let's get that pump going. Yeah, sweet. So we'll start that sparge process and let that go until we've got enough wort in there. Oh, there's an alarm. Alright, so now it's time to think about hopping. So now that I've got some of the wort in here, I'm ready to do my first wort hopping. And for that, I'm going to be using Horizon hops. I'm going with, for this 15-gallon batch, it's 56 grams of a 12.8% alpha acid, which for me is going to wind up with about 29 IBUs. I'm doing this first wort hopping so that hopefully these kind of floral and citrusy characteristics of the Horizon hops not only provide like a kind of a pleasant and more refined bitterness doing it with the first wort hopping, but then also to just carry through a little bit in the flavor. And this is the only hopping I'm doing until flameout. And let's see here. Flame on! And we're just now hitting a boil. So we're doing a 90-minute boil on this because this is a Pilsner-based beer. I've already thrown in the bittering hops via First Wort hopping. So the next thing to go in is at 10 minutes left. We'll throw in some super moss finings and then just the flameout / whirlpool hops. So yeah, just a little time to wait. Well, 10 minutes left in the boil. I've got some wort here with some super moss dissolved in it. I'm just going to add that here just to kind of aid with clarification. Alright, so flameout time. I'm adding, it was originally going to be 84 grams of Equinox hops, but I wound up having 93 grams in the jar, so I just used all of that. It's flameout, so we're not worried about the IBU calculations anyway. And that's just going to give us a little bit extra nose on this beer. So now I'm just going to quickly do the whirlpool, let it sit for 15 minutes, during which time we'll get the plate chiller and hoses set up, and then we will run off into the carboys. Alright, so cast off has begun through the plate chiller there into the carboys. I have the hose feeding the plate chiller, the water hose, just not turned on too terribly much, and according to my little thermometer here, the wort's coming out somewhere around 90 degrees, which is really good because I'm going to be fermenting this somewhere around 95. So yeah, very exciting. I'm going to get all these filled up and downstairs and heat wrapped and all that fun stuff, and then we'll take another look. Okay, so our wort is almost at temperature here, and now I'm going to just prepare the yeast and rehydrate it. So we've got some Kveik yeast here that was harvested from the last time that we did some, and this is yeast that came from both the top and the bottom of the fermenter. I'll have to do a video on that here sometime. But anyway, all I want to do is rehydrate it in, I've got a couple hundred mils in each of these flasks, one for each of the carboys, and it's just water that I sterilized. I pressure cooked it when I prepared my plate chiller last night. So everything's been sanitized here as well. So there's the spoon. And I'm going to be adding roughly a tablespoon of this yeast to each of these, which for me means probably a couple of these, at least a couple of these spoonfuls here. You could just fire it in dry like this, but I think rehydrating it will make pouring it into the carboys just a little bit easier, hence why I'm doing this. I'm going to let this stuff rehydrate in my incubator, sitting at around, just a little bit more there, at around 85 Fahrenheit, because the wort's going to be sitting at 95 when I pitch. As you can see, I had some stir bars in those flasks as well, so that I could also use the stir plates here just to help mix everything up and make sure that any of those bigger chunks, in fact, rehydrate and get mixed into solution. Alright, so I've got my rehydrated yeast here. Gonna mix it up a little bit again. Yeah, perfect. Sanitized flask, everything's looking good. I also aerated these, or oxygenated them somewhat, just by rocking them for a minute or so. I didn't want to put too much oxygen into them. Again, part of the key for these Kveiks is to try to stress out the yeast a little bit, so stress it we shall. So I'm going to get all three of these pitched and then carboy hoods and everything all set up. And there we are. Everybody's nice and happy. 94, 95, 96. Yep, perfect. All right, well, let's see what happens. Well, about 20 hours in, we've got some very happy yeast action going on here in these carboys. I'm pretty excited about that. And I should also mention the original gravity was 1055 on these here. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. So the next phase of this operation is adding some fruit to a couple of the carboys. I've got just about 500 grams, or just over 500 grams of sour cherries that I picked, and then 600 grams of what was originally frozen pineapple chunks. I've got them in the sous vide here, the precision cooker, at 130, and they've been in there for well over an hour. So these are pasteurized now, and I'm going to let them cool down just a little bit, and then we can add them to the carboys. All right, I didn't let these cool down too much because honestly they're going into some fairly warm wort anyway, or beer I should say. So I'm just going to, so I've obviously got everything all sanitized here. Look at all that juice that's come out of these cherries. This isn't a massive fruit addition, obviously. Normally when I do cherries, it's like 4 or 5 pounds into a carboy, but I'm just kind of looking for a subtle little, now it's even less subtle. I lost a couple of cherries there. Just a little subtle fruit addition here to kind of play off that Kveik yeast. So I also have, of course, my very fancy fruit addition tool here. All right, so there's one. I will just quickly, yeah, I think it'll be hard to kind of do this all at the same time. So we'll do the same thing here with the pineapple, and then we'll take a look afterwards. So here we are, post-fruit addition. I labeled them up, you know, just in case I can't tell what cherries or pineapple chunks look like. Got everything all labeled up here nicely. So yeah, we'll see how long this takes. This straight Kveik might be done in another day or so, hopefully. And these ones, I don't know if it might delay them ever so slightly, but we shall see. Well, these bad boys are done fermenting. Just for the record, the pineapple version turned out at 1.010 finishing gravity. The cherry was also at 1.010, and the original unfruited version was at 1.013 is where it finished. So it didn't quite get the same oomph out of it. But I've got them off the heat. They've been chilling down for a little bit. Unfortunately, my basement isn't super cold. So I won't get a lot of crash cooling off this, but I am going to go ahead and pressure transfer them. You can check out my video on that process if you like, and get them into kegs, sanitized kegs, and then go from there. All right, so after those beers were pressure transferred, I just chilled them down in kegs, got them into the keezer. I'd let them sit 2 weeks. I didn't bother to gelatin fine them like I do with most of my beers because I was going to be gone for a couple of weeks. It was just a perfect time to let them kind of naturally settle out. From there, I then pressure transferred into second kegs and carbonated. I've got videos on all those. You can check them out on my channel if you like. So it's time to test. Well, the day to test these beers has come along here. The two that I've got here today are the, I've got the pineapple Kveik and the cherry Kveik. The original one was delicious. I wound up actually giving it to a friend, though I don't have it here today, and I was kind of waiting on these just to finish up. So this is what I'm going to be testing. As you can see, well, particularly with this one, when they poured, they had a really nice frothy head, which was awesome. Super cool looking. They actually turned out really quite clear. Might be a little bit difficult just to tell in this video here, but let's do a little taste test. So starting off with the pineapple, you get some of that hop nose from the Equinox and the Equinox hops, I guess. Just the tropical and kind of limey citrus. And then the actual flavor of the beer here. That grist is shining through, so you have the Pilsner malt, you have some of that breadiness from the Vienna and the softness coming from the wheat. With the actual pineapple, there's just a little bit of that present there, but I mean, I only put in like 600 grams or whatever, right? I wasn't really expecting to get a whole big pineapple punch out of it, but that's totally fine. Taking a look now at the cherry. So in this one, the cherry's shining through more. Still getting all the same malt characteristics and whatnot. From that Kveik yeast, again, it's just amazing that you can ferment so hot at 95 Fahrenheit and you don't get any like weird off flavors or hot alcohols or anything like that. But this one has a little bit more cherry kind of punching through in the end, but there was a little bit more of the cherry in this. So, and it's a bit more of an assertive fruit. But anyway, super fun brew to do. Awesome any time of the year. Unfortunately, it's kind of cold and rainy outside today, so I'm not going to drink these outside. Well, you know what? Maybe I will. Anyway, yeah, really delicious. Super happy with how these turned out. And until next time, keep her at 11.
Kveik